The massive alien ship appeared on a quiet Tuesday morning, casting a shadow over the United Nations building in New York. Its dark metal hull absorbed sunlight like a void in the sky, stretching nearly 2 miles across. The world held its breath, waiting. Ambassador Tom Smith stood at the UN podium, his gray suit pressed perfectly, trying to hide his shaking hands. After 30 years in diplomatic service, nothing had prepared him for this moment. The screens around him showed the same scene playing out in every major city worldwide. Enormous ships hovering silently, waiting. "They call themselves the Imperial Galactic Union," he announced to the assembled world leaders. "They claim to control over 10,000 star systems." He paused, letting the information sink in. "And they demand our immediate surrender." The room erupted in chaos. Representatives from various nations jumped to their feet, shouting questions and demands. Smith raised his hands, calling for silence. "The Empire's ambassador made their position clear," he continued. "They view Earth as primitive, yet resource-rich. They've given us 30 days to submit to their rule, or..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood the threat. In the following days, Earth's military leaders gathered in an underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. General Bob White, a battle-hardened veteran with steel-gray hair, studied the holographic display showing the Imperial ship's positions. "Their technology is advanced," he said, addressing the room of military commanders. "But they're overconfident. Did you see how they positioned their fleet? No defensive formation. They don't consider us a threat." Colonel Mary Parker, head of Earth's secret space program, stepped forward. "That's their first mistake," she said, pressing a button on her tablet. The holographic display shifted, revealing hundreds of hidden human satellites and defense platforms. "We've been preparing for this possibility since we detected their first probe 10 years ago." The Empire's ambassador, a tall being with metallic skin who called himself First Speaker, demanded daily meetings with Earth's representatives. Each time, he grew more impatient with human resistance. "Your species is young," First Speaker declared during one session, his metallic voice echoing through the UN chamber. "The Empire has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Your resistance is both futile and illogical." Ambassador Smith maintained his composure, even as he noticed the alien's subtle signs of frustration. "We understand your position," he replied calmly. "However, humanity requires time to consider such a significant change in our governance." Behind the scenes, Earth's nations worked together with unprecedented cooperation. Old enemies shared military secrets, scientists collaborated across borders, and industrial facilities ran around the clock. The Empire's threats had achieved something remarkable: complete human unity. 20 days into the ultimatum, First Speaker made his final appearance at the UN. "Your time for peaceful submission is ending," he announced. "The Empire's patience grows thin. We have observed your primitive attempts at preparation. They will not save you." Ambassador Smith stood up slowly, straightening his tie. The words he spoke next would be remembered in history books for centuries to come. "First Speaker, humanity has spent its entire existence fighting. Against nature, against each other, against extinction itself. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own destructive tendencies. If the Empire wants Earth, they should know one thing." He paused, making direct eye contact with the metallic being. "We don't submit, we don't surrender, and we're far from primitive." First Speaker left Earth that day, his final report to the Empire describing humans as stubborn primitives requiring forceful subjugation. The massive ships withdrew to lunar orbit, preparing for what they assumed would be a swift military operation. In underground bases across the planet, humanity's leaders smiled. The Empire had made the classic mistake of judging Earth by its visible technology. They never thought to look deeper, to understand why humans had kept their true capabilities hidden. They would learn soon enough. The first Imperial attack came at dawn. Massive warships descended upon Moon Base Alpha, their weapons glowing with purple energy. Commander John Peters watched from the base's control room as thousands of Imperial fighters filled the space between Earth and its moon. "They're making quite a show," he said to his crew, his voice steady despite the threat. "Let's show them our first surprise." He pressed his palm against the scanner, entering the activation code for Earth's hidden defenses. The Empire's initial barrage struck Moon Base Alpha with enough force to destroy a small continent. Imperial sensors showed total destruction of the target. First Speaker watched from his command ship, satisfaction evident in his metallic features. Then the dust cleared. Moon Base Alpha stood untouched, surrounded by a shimmering blue shield that seemed to absorb every energy blast. The Empire's most powerful weapons splashed against it like rain on a window. "Impossible." First Speaker's metallic voice cracked with static. "Their technology is primitive. They cannot have energy shielding." In the base below, Dr. Kate Brown, lead scientist of Project SHIELD, allowed herself a small smile. 10 years of reverse engineering that crashed Imperial scout ship really paid off, she said to Commander Peters. Their own technology turned against them. The Empire launched wave after wave of attacks. Each one failed. Their ship's sensors couldn't even detect the shield's power source, because it wasn't where they expected it to be. Humans had learned to miniaturize and hide their technology in ways the Empire had never considered. 3 days into the assault, humanity revealed its second surprise. Hidden hangar doors opened across the lunar surface. Earth's secret space fleet emerged, sleek, black ships that absorbed radar and light alike. At their head flew the EDS Revenge, commanded by Captain Bill Harris. "All ships, attack pattern Delta," Harris ordered through the fleet command channel. "Remember your training. These aliens think size equals power. Let's prove them wrong." The human ships were smaller than their Imperial counterparts, but they moved with incredible speed and precision. Imperial pilots, used to fighting slower, larger vessels, found themselves unable to track the agile Earth fighters. The humans had spent years studying Imperial tactics from stolen data. They knew exactly where to hit. First Speaker watched in horror as his fighters exploded one after another. Human vessels seemed to appear from nowhere, strike with devastating accuracy, and vanish again. Their weapons, hybrid designs combining Earth ingenuity with stolen Imperial tech, cut through Imperial shields like they weren't there. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his tactical officers. "Their civilization barely has spaceflight." On Earth, in the underground command center, General White monitored the battle through advanced holographic displays. "Send in the AI squadrons," he ordered. "Let's see how they handle fighting computers that think faster than their pilots." Unmanned Earth fighters joined the battle, their artificial intelligence cores making combat decisions in microseconds. Imperial pilots found themselves facing opponents that could outthink them, outmaneuver them, and predict their every move. By the end of the first week, the Empire had lost over 300 ships. They hadn't destroyed a single human vessel. First Speaker ordered a tactical retreat to regroup, but the damage to Imperial pride and their military reputation was already done. Commander Peters stood at the window of Moon Base Alpha, watching Imperial ships withdraw. "They thought we'd be an easy conquest," he said to Dr. Brown, who stood beside him. "They never considered that finding that scout ship 10 years ago was the best thing that could have happened to us." "We're not done yet," Dr. Brown replied, checking data on her tablet. "This was just their first wave. They'll be back with bigger ships, different weapons." "Let them come," Peters said, his eyes fixed on the retreating Imperial fleet. "Every attack teaches us more about their technology. Every retreat makes them look weaker to their subject worlds." He smiled slightly. "And we haven't even shown them our real weapons yet." In orbit around Mars, hidden shipyards continued producing Earth's newest vessels, incorporating lessons learned from the first battle. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this war. The Empire was about to learn why you should never underestimate humans who have time to get ready. The Imperial War Council met in their Golden Palace on Capital World. their metallic faces reflecting the harsh light of 3 suns. First speaker stood before them, trying to explain Earth's unexpected resistance. How did these primitives hide their true capabilities? Demanded High Commander, his voice booming through the chamber. Our scouts observed them for 50 years. In Earth's orbit, Captain Mark Wilson of the stealth ship EDS Shadowhunter smiled as he intercepted their transmission. "That's the thing about humans," he said to his crew. "We're really good at hiding things when we want to." The Shadowhunter, along with 30 other stealth vessels, had been following Imperial supply lines for the past week. These ships, painted with light-absorbing black material and powered by silent engines, were impossible for Imperial sensors to detect. "All ships, prepare for Operation Knife in the Dark," Wilson ordered. His fleet had picked their target, the Empire's largest supply convoy, carrying fuel and weapons to their main fleet. The attack was swift and merciless. Human ships appeared from seemingly empty space, their advanced AI targeting systems striking the convoy's weakest points. 20 minutes later, the entire Imperial supply line was in ruins, and the human ships had vanished again. Back on Earth, in the hidden technology center beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Tom Reed watched the success of his AI combat systems with pride. "The Empire built their computers to think like them," he explained to General White. "But we built ours to think like humans, creative, unpredictable, adaptable." The massive underwater facility housed Earth's greatest secret, a quantum supercomputer network that could process battle strategies faster than any Imperial system. The Empire relied on rigid, predictable tactics. Humanity's AI created new strategies on the fly, learning and adapting with each encounter. "Sir," a young technician called out, "we've decoded more of their neural network. You won't believe what we found." The Empire's overconfidence had led to their greatest mistake. Their ship's bio-neural networks, which they believed too advanced for humans to understand, had been designed thousands of years ago. They'd never upgraded them, seeing no need. Human computer scientists, however, had been improving their systems daily. On the far side of the moon, Commander Peters oversaw the construction of humanity's newest weapon. "The Empire thinks size matters," he said to Dr. Brown, who stood beside him watching the massive structure take shape. "Let's show them what happens when you combine their technology with human innovation." The weapon was small by Imperial standards, barely the size of a football field. But it contained technology the Empire had never imagined, a fusion of human quantum computing and reversed-engineered Imperial tech. Its first test would come soon. In deep space, Captain Wilson's fleet continued its guerrilla campaign. Like the ancient naval raiders, he told his crew during their pre-mission briefing, "Hit them where they're weak, vanish before they can respond, and let them waste resources trying to defend everything." The Empire's response to these attacks showed their growing frustration. They sent larger ships, more powerful weapons, and watched as humans turned their own strength against them. Bigger ships made easier targets. More powerful weapons meant bigger explosions when Earth's AI systems found their weak points. First speaker received reports of growing unrest in the Empire's outer worlds. Stories spread about the seemingly primitive Earth humans who fought like demons, appeared from nowhere, and couldn't be stopped. Some Imperial colonies began questioning whether the Empire was as powerful as they claimed. In the underwater command center, General White reviewed the latest battle reports. The Empire built its power on fear and overwhelming force, he said to Dr. Reed. They never had to face an enemy who simply refused to be afraid. Dr. Reed nodded, watching the quantum computer's predictions of future battles. They spent thousands of years becoming complacent. We spent our entire history learning to fight smarter, not bigger. As another Imperial supply fleet disappeared into the darkness of space, destroyed by enemies they never saw coming, the Empire began to realize a terrible truth. They hadn't started this war with a primitive species. They had awakened a sleeping giant that had been preparing for this moment for decades. And humanity was just getting started. Professor Jack West hadn't slept in 3 days. The computer screens surrounding him in the underground lab flashed with Imperial code sequences. Empty coffee cups littered his desk. His hands flew across the keyboard as lines of alien text transformed into readable data. "I've got it," he whispered, then louder. "I've got it." His voice echoed through the facility. "Someone get General White down here now." The Empire's entire communication system lay exposed before him. What had taken the Empire thousands of years to build, human hackers had cracked in just weeks. They thought their language was too complex for humans to understand. They were wrong. General White arrived within minutes, Dr. Reed right behind him. "Show me," the general ordered, his eyes bright despite the late hour. "Look here," Professor West pointed to his screen. "Their entire fleet network runs on the same basic code. No redundancy, no backup systems. They never thought anyone could break it." In orbit above Earth, Captain Wilson received the new data on his stealth ship. "Send it to the AI core," he ordered. "Let's see what our computers make of this." Earth's quantum computers began their work. They found patterns in Imperial communications that even the Empire didn't know existed. Battle plans, ship movements, supply routes. Everything was suddenly visible. "Time for Operation Thunderstrike," General White announced to the Global Command Center. On screens worldwide, military leaders watched as humanity prepared its biggest attack yet. The plan was beautiful in its simplicity. Earth's AI systems would send carefully crafted signals into the Imperial network. The Empire's own ships would receive commands that looked perfectly normal but contained hidden traps. "Launch in 5 minutes," Commander Peters announced from Moon Base Alpha. Every human ship moved into position, waiting. The signal went out. Across Imperial space, warships received new orders. Their bio-neural networks, designed to process commands instantly, accepted the human-crafted code without question. Then the trap activated. One by one, Imperial ships began shutting down. Emergency systems failed. Weapons went offline. The mighty Imperial fleet, pride of their civilization, began drifting helplessly in space. 30% of their fleet is disabled, Dr. Reed reported, watching the numbers climb. Their entire defense network is falling apart. First Speaker watched in horror as reports flooded in from across Imperial space. "Impossible," he raged. "These are primitive beings. They cannot control our ships." But they could, and they did. Captain Wilson led the first attack on the defenseless Imperial ships. "All vessels, attack pattern Omega," he commanded. "Take out their engines first. Let's add these ships to our collection." Human vessels swarmed the powerless Imperial warships. Instead of destroying them, special crews boarded each vessel. The Empire had built their ships to last. Now those same ships would serve Earth. In the underwater command center, Professor West continued his work. "We're not just shutting them down," he explained to General White. "We're learning everything. Their star maps, their colony locations, their technology secrets. It's all in these systems." The Empire had grown lazy with power. They used the same codes, the same systems, the same strategies they had used for centuries. They never improved because they never needed to. Until now. "Sir," a young officer called out to General White, "we're getting surrender signals from 3 Imperial border worlds. They're asking for Earth's protection." The news spread quickly. Worlds that had suffered under Imperial rule for generations saw their chance for freedom. The Empire's reputation for invincibility was shattered. "Send them our terms," General White ordered. "Any world that stands with Earth will have our protection." In his lab, Professor West finally allowed himself to rest. "You know what their biggest mistake was?" he asked Dr. Reed. "They thought complexity meant security. They built systems so complicated that only their best minds could understand them." "And we?" Dr. Reed asked, though he knew the answer. "We made things simple, efficient, adaptable." West smiled tiredly. "Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." As reports of Imperial ships falling silent continued to pour in, the Empire faced a shocking reality. Their technology, their pride for thousands of years, had become their greatest weakness, and humanity had turned it against them. The war's end was now in sight, but humanity wasn't finished teaching the Empire its final lessons. The Imperial Palace shook as another explosion lit up the night sky. On his golden throne, the Emperor watched his capital world burn. Emergency alarms blared through every corridor. His empire was falling apart. "My lord," first speaker knelt before the throne, his metallic body showing signs of damage. "Earth forces have taken control of the Centauri sector. 3 more core worlds have declared their independence." In Earth's military command center, Admiral Rick Taylor studied the galactic map. Red lights showing Imperial control were going dark one by one, replaced by green lights of liberated systems. "The Empire is trying to contact us again," his communications officer reported. "They're begging for peace talks." Admiral Taylor smiled grimly. "Put them through on the main screen." The massive display lit up, showing the Emperor's face for the first time. The once proud ruler looked shaken. "We offer immediate cessation of all hostile actions," the Emperor declared, trying to maintain his dignity. "We will recognize Earth's independence and establish trade." "No," Admiral Taylor cut him off. "Those terms might have worked 3 months ago. Now we require unconditional surrender." The Emperor's face showed shock. No one had ever dared interrupt him before. "You cannot make demands of the Empire. We have ruled for thousands of years." "And that rule ends today," Taylor replied calmly. "You have 1 hour to surrender, or we continue our advance." In orbit around one of the Empire's richest worlds, Captain Wilson watched as another Imperial fleet tried to flee. His ships didn't even need to fire. The automated defense platforms, captured and reprogrammed by Earth's AI, did the work for them. "Cleanup operation complete in this sector," he reported, moving on to the next target. The Empire's mighty war machine was in chaos. Their rigid command structure, once their strength, now meant no one could make decisions without orders from above, and the humans had jammed their communication networks. Back on Earth, Professor West showed General White his latest discovery. "Look at their population statistics," he said, pointing to his screen. 90% of Imperial citizens are desk workers. They've forgotten how to fight their own battles. They relied on machines and automated systems," Dr. Reed added. "Now those same systems obey us." Reports came in from across the galaxy. Imperial soldiers were surrendering in mass numbers. They had never faced real combat. Their automated systems had always done the fighting. Against battle-hardened human forces, they stood no chance. In a secret bunker on the Empire's capital world, the Emperor's advisors argued desperately. "We must use the planet-killer weapons," one shouted. "We can't," another replied, fear in his voice. "Humans have control of the activation codes. They've locked us out of our own weapons." The Empire had spent thousands of years building the galaxy's largest arsenal. Now they watched helplessly as humans turned it against them. Every defense system, every automated weapon, every security measure became a weapon for Earth. Admiral Taylor received word that the Emperor was attempting to evacuate his capital. "Not today," he said quietly. He pressed a button, sending new orders to the captured defense platforms orbiting the Imperial capital. The Emperor's escaped ship never left the atmosphere. Caught in the crossfire of his own defense systems, the mighty ruler of 1,000 worlds found himself trapped on his dying planet. In the underwater command center, General White watched the final phase begin. "Send the message to all Imperial worlds," he ordered. "Any world that surrenders peacefully will be protected under Earth's new coalition. Any world that resists." He didn't need to finish the sentence. The burning Imperial capital spoke clearly enough. The empire that had threatened Earth with extinction now faced its own. Their arrogance had led them to create weapons they thought no one else could use. Their pride had stopped them from improving their defenses. Their contempt for primitive humans had blinded them to the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen. As the hour deadline approached, the Emperor sat alone in his palace. On every screen, Earth's forces advanced. The mighty empire had lasted for thousands of years. It had taken humans less than 6 months to tear it apart. The sky above the imperial capital turned black with ships. Not the golden vessels of the empire, but the dark, sleek warships of Earth. At their head, the massive flagship EDS Victory cast a shadow over the Emperor's palace. General Mike Stone stood on the Victory's bridge, watching the final pieces move into place. After 6 months of war, humanity was ready to end this. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer announced. "The planet's defense grid is under our control. The Empire has nowhere to run." In the depths of his palace, the Emperor watched through security feeds as human forces surrounded his world. His once mighty empire had crumbled in months. Now these primitives commanded his own defense systems. "My lord," a guard rushed in. "Humans have breached the outer defenses. They're inside the city." On the streets of the capital, Earth's ground forces moved with precision. Leading them was Colonel Frank Rogers, veteran of 100 battles on Earth. His soldiers carried weapons that merged human ingenuity with captured Imperial technology. "Remember your training," Rogers told his troops. "These Imperial soldiers have never fought without their machines. We have." The battle for the capital was unlike anything the Empire had seen in its 1,000-year history. Imperial troops, used to letting automated systems do their fighting, faced human soldiers who had mastered both high-tech warfare and hand-to-hand combat. "They're retreating," a human soldier called out as another Imperial unit fled. Above the city, General Stone received an urgent message from Earth Command. "Sir, our sensors detect energy buildup in the Imperial Palace. They're trying to activate the planetary self-destruct." "Not on my watch," Stone growled. He opened a channel to Professor West back on Earth. "Can you stop them?" In his lab, West's fingers flew across his keyboard. "Already done," he replied. "They forgot we control their systems now. The self-destruct codes have been purged." The Emperor's last desperate move had failed. In the palace control room, he watched helplessly as his final weapon refused to activate. Outside, human forces closed in from all directions. "Sir," Colonel Rogers radioed to General Stone, "we've reached the palace gates. Request permission to proceed." "Granted," Stone replied. "Bring me that Emperor." The palace's automated defenses, once the pride of Imperial engineering, stood silent as human troops moved through the golden halls. The Emperor's elite guards, finding their advanced weapons useless, threw down their arms. In orbit, Captain Wilson directed his ships to secure the rest of the planet. "Check every bunker and hidden base," he ordered. The Empire was fond of secret exits. Not this time. The palace's massive doors fell with a thunderous crash. Colonel Rogers led his team into the throne room, where the Emperor sat alone on his golden seat. "How?" the Emperor asked as human soldiers surrounded him. "We ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. Our technology was supreme." Rogers smiled grimly. "That was your mistake," he said. "You stopped improving. You thought you were perfect. Humans never make that mistake. We never stop learning, never stop adapting." General Stone's voice came through Rogers' radio. "The capital is secure. All Imperial forces have surrendered." Throughout the galaxy, the news spread quickly. The empire that had threatened Earth with extinction had fallen. Their 1,000-year reign had ended in just 6 months. In the underwater command center on Earth, General White received the official surrender transmission. "Send word to all human forces," he ordered. "The war is over." Dr. Reed looked at the galactic map, now showing human control over former Imperial space. "They never understood us," he said quietly. "They saw our short history and thought us weak. They didn't realize that every hardship made us stronger." The Emperor was led from his palace in restraints, watching as human ships landed in his capital. The mighty empire had fallen not to superior numbers or overwhelming force, but to human ingenuity and determination. As the sun set on the imperial capital for the last time, Colonel Rogers looked at the city around him. "You know what's funny?" he said to his troops. "They could have had us as allies. Instead, they chose to make us enemies." The galaxy would never forget the lesson. Never underestimate humans. They don't just fight wars. They rewrite the rules of warfare itself. 1 year after the Empire's fall, the new Galactic Council met in what was once the Emperor's palace. The Golden Throne had been replaced with a simple round table. Representatives from 100 worlds sat together, with Admiral Taylor representing Earth. "The last Imperial holdouts surrendered this morning," he announced to the Council. "The war is officially over." In the streets below, beings from across the galaxy walked freely. The Imperial capital, once reserved for the elite, now served as the center of a new alliance. Ships from all worlds came and went freely through the spaceports. Professor West stood at a window in his new laboratory, watching alien children play with human kids in the park outside. A year ago, those Imperial children weren't allowed to even speak to other species, he said to Dr. Reed. Now look at them. The changes across the galaxy have been dramatic. Worlds that had suffered under Imperial rule for generations now govern themselves, protected by Earth's military might. But Earth had not become the new empire. Instead, they had created something different. The Galactic Defense Alliance is now official, Admiral Taylor announced in the council chamber. Each world governs itself, but we stand together against any threat. In orbit above the capital, Captain Wilson supervised training exercises. Imperial pilots now learned alongside humans, amazed by tactics they had never considered. The rigid Imperial military doctrine was being replaced by human creativity and adaptability. They're quick learners, Wilson told Commander Peters during a video call. Once they stopped following thousand-year-old rules, they started thinking for themselves. Back on Earth, General White met with alien diplomats in the Underwater Command Center. The facility, once Earth's greatest secret, now served as a school where other worlds learned to develop their own defenses. The Empire kept you dependent on their technology, he explained to the gathered representatives. We'll teach you to build your own, to defend yourselves. The former emperor, now living under house arrest in a comfortable but secure facility, watched news broadcasts about the galaxy's transformation. His guards reported that he spent hours studying human history, trying to understand how his empire had fallen so quickly. In the new Academy of Galactic Defense, Colonel Rogers trained troops from 50 different worlds. The Empire taught you to rely on machines, he told his students. We'll teach you to rely on yourselves first, technology second. The Empire's vast libraries, once restricted to a select few, were now open to all. Professor West led a team of scientists from various worlds, combining knowledge that the Empire had kept separated for centuries. Their biggest mistake wasn't attacking Earth, he explained to a group of alien researchers. It was thinking that keeping worlds isolated and dependent made them stronger. Unity and shared knowledge. That's true strength. Admiral Taylor stood before the Galactic Council, delivering his final report. The last Imperial weapons have been secured, he announced. The defense networks have been rebuilt. The trading routes are open to all. In schools across the former empire, children learned new history lessons. They learned how a supposedly primitive world had shattered an empire of 1,000 years in just 6 months. They learned why never underestimate humans became the galaxy's most important rule. Dr. Reed, working with alien scientists, made another discovery in the Imperial archives. They had predicted their own fall, he told General White. Their best analysts warned them centuries ago that their refusal to change would destroy them. They ignored the warnings. The galaxy entered a new age. The Empire's rigid hierarchy was replaced by cooperation and innovation. Worlds that had never spoken to each other now traded knowledge and resources freely. In the council chamber, Admiral Taylor looked at the representatives around him. humans and aliens working together to build something new. The Empire thought power came from control, he said. We showed them it comes from freedom and unity. As ships from 100 worlds flew peaceful missions through what was once imperial space, the galaxy remembered the lesson. The Empire had spent 1,000 years building walls between worlds. Humans had torn down those walls in 6 months, and the galaxy was better for it.